All right, what's up, everyone? I haven't done a recap in a while, so I thought I'd jump on and go through some of my trades this week and kind of just discuss where my thoughts are with the market and where we could be potentially going over the next few weeks or so. This week, no crazy trades for me, mostly just some cash flow stuff. I've been much lighter on the swing trading. It just seems like the markets have been super frothy, especially you start seeing sectors like quantum going off like they have over the last few days. It's just, those companies have really no business doing these moves, and that's just peak euphoria. And that's typical in late bull cycles. You start to get these types of moves. I'm not saying that this is going to end the bull cycle, but markets are getting to the point where they kind of need to chill out, get some more sideways action, maybe get a deeper pull in, and kind of reset some things, because we've had a huge run over the last few months since April, and you just have seen some crazy stuff going on. Last month, August, we had the small cap cycle was going nuts, and then you stepped into this month, you got quantum going crazy and some other sectors like nuclear, and it's just a lot of these names have been going to extreme levels, and it's just a lot of retail piling into stuff, buying names at extreme levels, and eventually that's going to have to cool off. So I'm expecting that to kind of happen over the next month or so, and hopefully the markets can kind of digest and get a deeper pull in for a more structured market. Because right now it's just been a little crazy with how much buying's been in the market. All right, so let's jump into this week's trades. I traded quite a few small caps, some large caps. Mostly large cap stuff was selling options, and I think I traded some calls on some names, but I'll run through those in a little bit. So first one, AREV. This was earlier this week, just a small cap short. These are, as you guys know, I trade these a lot. This is more so my day-to-day cash flow types of trades, is shorting these small cap pops. This one was a nice pre-market move. The news most of the time in these names is garbage. It adds no value to the bottom line in these companies. Most of them are just pump ups so they can dilute shares. And so AREV was on the scanners. Good volume, decent action. It kind of got in a little early here. I added on the turn here and then stopped through high day, and we got this nice accelerated move. And then on the next candle, we got a hard rejection. A seller stepped in and started smashing the bid, so I jumped right back in, and we got a quick 20-cent flush, basically back to the VWAP and moving averages, where I started covering some into this move. And then at the open, I was going to hold it. Basically, if we would have gotten a pop, I probably would have shorted some more into the 30s and 40s, risking like pre-market highs. But this thing just died right out of the open and was able to cover some for a really nice gain here in small cap land. So yeah, like I was saying, these small caps, these are my day-to-day. This is what I normally trade. And then when I trade mid and large caps, it's usually swing trading or selling options, stuff like that, where I'm comfortable holding overnight. This type of stuff I don't normally hold overnight. This is mostly just day trading, cash flow type of stuff. All right, so that was ARBE. Next one, Riot. This is a really clean trade. When you get these super linear moves where it's just constantly going up, decent volume profile, not the best, but it did have some acceleration towards the top here. And we had a nice move on the daily. Okay, so this is what I'm looking at on the daily here. It was on this day, and especially on large caps, I want to see multi-ATR moves on the day set up, along with the other things, the big volume, the extension away from VWAP. Those are all big factors in trading these mean reversion setups. And this one, we had a huge move after we've already had a big move. And this day, if you look at the average day, these candles are moving. This was like twice, if not more, in just one day relative what's done into the past. Okay, and oftentimes when that happens, you can get some clean reversals. And this was, no exception here. We got a nice turn. Seller came in and the bid just dropped out and ran straight back into the 10-day and down into VWAP, where I was covering down into that move pretty aggressively. What I like to see, and I'll talk about this in another trade with SNDK that I actually traded today, is when we have these sharp moves out of the open that get rejected heavily and get back below VWAP and are starting to hold below VWAP. A lot of these times when this happens, it sets up for another leg lower. That's why I was adding against the VWAP here on these little bounces, because it was starting to hold. This one, it was just happened to get another run back up to high day, and if I remember correctly, I think it made another push towards high day and then had the ultimate fail. So yeah, so if we look here, here's the move. Bust out the 2 minute. So this was the trade I was shorting here, and then stopped out, which it ended up making a new high a day and then failed and faded off for the rest of the day. So I didn't retry it again because at this point we were putting in higher lows and volume was coming in, we're breaking highs. This could have easily kept going and it just ended up turning. That's fine. This isn't a clean setup for me for a reversal. I'd rather be in this part when you're getting a sharper move, not consolidating, moving higher, consolidating, moving higher. All right, so that was Riot. EVAX, another small cap. This was in the pre-market. Not the cleanest action, but what I did like is, it had multiple legs higher. The news was really, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a bogus headline, and we had a pretty sharp rejection here through the pre-market highs. So I was shorting on this bounce here. We ended up getting another short or another pop through pre-market highs here that got rejected pretty heavily. And on these moves higher, when we're starting to push, we should be seeing much higher volume. Now this was a spike here, but it wasn't the biggest of the day, and it rejected. It couldn't hold above the pre-market highs. So I was telling me sellers were stepping in up here. There was some supply, so I added to my position, got the confirmation on the next 2 candles, and so I added to it again here. I was just coming into 5, and we ended up getting a nice flush down to VWAP and lower, where I started covering some, and it just kind of started fading away here. You'll notice the volume's very much more, once these top out, you can see the volume was a lot more on the sell side, and it just started kind of dying off here before it eventually got back above the 10-day and started pushing higher, where I stopped out of the rest of my balance. Okay, so yeah, usually in the pre-market, this is what I'm looking for, is these small caps that are posting bogus news and making these big runs. These moves can get so exaggerated with a ton of retail traders chasing these, and more times than not, they get faded really hard. So that's where I'm looking to take advantage of. All right, so that was EVAX, another small cap short. Oklo, I was trading this. So yeah, Oklo had a huge move this week, right? We'll pull up the daily. I believe a lot of you guys were able to catch the move higher, and this was on this day. So this gap down, this was the pre-market action coming in. So we had a huge move, and then we put in a nice red day here. We broke the prior day low of the day before, and it was selling off super hard in the pre-market, and that's where I was taking this trade. We had a big leg, and then consolidated, and then we had an accelerated leg that we got, look how wide these bars are compared to the initial leg, and then all the volume that was coming in. Clearly someone was trying to get out of their position, and so I was looking for the bounce on this. But the problem with Oklo in the pre-market, it was very thin and volatile. It was skipping point. Like, I got in this position, so this candle closed, this one opened, and a buyer had started to step in, so I jumped in, and then it did this wick almost immediately. I didn't even have time to stop out. I would have stopped out if it didn't happen so quickly, but that just shows how thin it was. I mean, it did like 2-3 points immediately and then climbed back up, and then went back. The next candle we got a nice pop, and I started trimming on it because I felt a little uncomfortable with how thinly it was trading. And then once it started to come back in and broke back below where my break even was, I just bailed on it because I didn't want this to skip down another 3-4 points, and me trying to get out of the position, just getting a ton of slippage on it. So I kind of got lucky on this one, was able to get some of the profit off and got a little win on it. But that's just part of trading in the pre-market. You won't always have the best liquidity, and you got to be really mindful of your risk and your positioning and stuff. Okay, so that was Oklo, a little crazy pre-market trade. MP, another large cap reversal. So large cap reversals are, I find them to be a little bit tougher than small caps. Small caps can get far more out of line as far as the size of the moves. NP had a really big move this day, and it was super linear. And what I mean by linear is how clean the moves are. These are super clean legs, and the price action is really nice. This was a ghost print. I don't think this was a real trade. But when it was coming up here, I was looking for the turn to get short. And so this is where I took it here. It ended up popping up back to highs where it got stopped. And then the next candle, a seller jumped in and started swiping the bids, and I saw this on the tape. So I re-entered immediately, and we got a really nice flush down. I didn't really feel comfortable with this trade, so I was a bit more defensive. I was going to trail it against the 10-day, and it ended up reclaiming and then consolidating and then started pushing higher again. And I was just like, I'll just take my money and move on from this one. I don't want to be fighting this if it pushes back up to high a day and then, giving back all the profits on this thing. And I think what happened was it ended up, well, first of all, let's look at the daily. So it was on this day, right? Another huge outside day relative to what it normally does. So this is like this is at least a 2 ATR move, maybe more. And that's what I want to see in these, large cap or any mean reversion trade, really. I want to see a large move on the daily compared to what it normally does. It's really important. So what this ended up doing was, it was on this day. So it did end up, this is where I stopped out here. I took the trade here, covered, and it did end up bleeding out and just slowly fading off the rest of the day, which is fine. I was a lot more defensive. I made some good money on it. I mean, it dropped like 2 or 3 points. So made some good money on it. I just didn't want to be fighting this super in play name. MP, obviously, a lot of tailwinds behind it. And so I just didn't want to get chopped up fighting this thing. But ended up nicely fading off. I think got all the way back to VWAP, around just after lunchtime, early afternoon. So, when you see these moves, especially when you get like a multi-leg move like this, these can often set up for really good reversals. And this one ended up fading off nicely. It just wasn't as quick as some of, as I would like to see on the backside. It just kind of topped off, made a sharp move, and then just kind of slowly grinded lower throughout the day. All right, so that was MP. I think that was, and then I had SNDK. That was one of the shorts I traded today. SNDK has been completely out of control. I'll pull up the daily here. So I also have my puts on this as well. I mean, you look at this thing, we had an RSI of like 96, 95, coming into the peak here, just gapping up every day, just gotten way extended, way ahead of itself. And we finally started, I think I was buying puts maybe on this day. So I was a little bit early, I added a little bit more, and I think I added some more on this day. I still haven't trimmed any of the puts. I'm waiting for a bigger move here. I think that this could easily see back into the 20-day or in the mid-low 80s, because this is such a big move. This is going to have a deeper pull in. I feel like it's just a matter of how long it's going to take. And what I could see happening is we made this big move. We're come back, bouncing off the 10-day and kind of just sitting on it. I could see a couple more days of just some sideways action and then a break lower from there. So that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for over the next week or two. I think the options I have are for October, mid-October, so I got plenty of time left on them. And I would be incredibly surprised if this bounced back and made new highs. I think that's a low probability. It could definitely happen, don't get me wrong. I just think the probabilities of this move are skewed to the downside than this making new highs. So I'm comfortable holding my position right now, and I'm going to let this play out a little bit more. But this trade was this morning, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier. When you get these moves, sharp to the upside for the first leg, and it gets rejected sharply back below VWAP, these oftentimes set up for another leg short, and that's exactly what happened here. Now, this one closed back below VWAP, kind of popped above and consolidated under the 10-day, and you can see the 10-day started to squeeze it back lower, and once I saw this bar get back down with some good volume and some selling, I took it as it was breaking through this low here, this low pivot. And then the next candle, we got a really nice clean move where I was covering into low a day and into the yesterday's close here, this dotted line. We ended up bouncing back, and I ended up adding to the position, covering some more as it moved into my favor, and I was basically down to about a third of a position here. And what I wanted to see is this consolidate over yesterday's close and then make another leg lower where I would have been, covering the balance. And it ended up holding and just grinding back up to VWAP where I stopped, break even on the balance. So nice little trade here on SNDK. Not the easiest trader. As you can see, the volume's not the best, which can make it a little bit trickier, but it also allows for these bigger moves when you're able to catch them. So that was pretty much my week. I traded some other large cap names. I did some options, mainly on these ones, so I'll run through these. INTC, I sold some puts on this day. I think on this day, 3 days. So INTC, obviously, big time in play. You got the government backing it. You got NVIDIA dumping a bunch of money into it. And we got a big gap higher. Now we got a 3-day orderly pullback, and so what I did was I was starting to sell some puts on. I think I was selling the 26s. So what that means is if INTC keeps coming down and ends up closing below 26 at the time of expiration, I'm sorry, the 27s is what I was selling, then I would get assigned those shares and I'd be buying them at 27, which is fine because I wanted to own it anyways. The other side of that equation with selling puts is if it doesn't come down here and bounces, then I get to keep the premium. So it's kind of the trade-off. It's if the trade works in my favor, I collect the premium. If it doesn't, then I get to buy the shares at a cheaper price. And so that was my idea with INTC here. And this strategy can work really well in bull markets. A lot of these times the dips get bought and you can collect on those premiums fairly easily. All right, I did that a few times this week. I did that on INTC. I did it on Nail is when I did. I sold them, I think I sold some on this day, and I think I sold some more on this day. And I sold the 65s for a couple weeks out. And I'm already, collecting on the premium. It's starting to die off today. It was up like 20% on them. So I'm going to hold this. I like the home builders with, interest rates coming in. It should help the housing sector. So that's the idea behind this. We had, a sharp move coming into the interest rate cuts, and now we've pulled in quite a bit over a short period of time. So I'm looking to play a bounce back into these moving averages and just collect on the premium that I sold on this move lower. Okay, so this is Nail, not as clean as a setup as INTC, but it's just I wanted to play this sector with, the overall market theme and having this really sharp move lower. So next week I'll be looking for a bounce back into the high 70s, low 80s, where the put premium should be pretty much eroded. Let's see, what was some of the other? NBIS was one I traded. I started swing trading this. I might have actually bought some on this day, and then I think I added a little bit more as it was starting to curl higher. And I sold some into 100, 110s, and I stopped out today. I had a small trailer, but it broke this day's low here, so I stopped out around 106.6-ish, somewhere around here. But really nice win. I haven't been swing trading a ton as far as buying shares and stocks, just given how extended everything feels. I just don't feel comfortable really sizing in and getting aggressive on swings. I'd rather see the market kind of come in and reset and then come out of that correction where I can get more aggressive on swing trading coming into the end of the year. So that was NBIS. I think a lot of people in the room were trading this move as well. This is a really nice setup. When we get these big earnings, or not earnings, news events and names and in-play sectors, if it can hold the low of that move, then oftentimes you're going to get another leg, right? So we got the big gap up, we came down, put in a low, and then we consolidated while holding this low at 86.12 here. When you see that, that's people are absorbing buying in this consolidation zone, and more times than not, you're going to see another leg come out of it, and that's exactly what happened with NBIS. So that was a really nice trade there. What was the other one? I think I had another one. PayPal. Oh yeah. So PayPal's been a little bit trickier. So we've obviously been in this consolidation zone over the last couple months. And this day we had the news with Google where they are going to have PayPal do all their payments for, ads, and they were adding this new AI element from PayPal to all their services, which is big. And that's why we got this big day here, and then you got a big gap up, which eventually sold off, right? And then we got some more news, I think that day, maybe this day or this day, a company was buying a lot of their debt that they had lent out, consumer debt. So that was another positive there. It's still a little weak. I'm not super stoked about where it's trading right now. I bought it on this day on the pullback. I bought some shares here and I added a little bit lower. I think my cost basis is just over 68. And then I also sold some puts on it. I think I sold the 66s, which I'm still holding, and I'm still holding the equity. If this breaks down below 66 and starting to trade lower, I'll probably cut my stock position and then just sit in the puts and get assigned those and hold those for once it eventually gets a bounce. But right now it's holding the lower end of this zone. So next week I want to see this obviously reclaim the moving averages and hold higher and hopefully make it back into the 70 area, back into the top end of this zone. So we'll see how this plays out. But obviously a lot weaker than other names. It's not my favorite position I have right now, but I am still holding it and going to see how it trades into next week. Okay, so that is PayPal. And really I think that's pretty much all I did this week. Obviously looking at the Qs, it's just been a massive move with very little pullback. We had a decent move here, obviously got bought up, came in, put a little W bottom, made new highs, and now, excuse me, what we're seeing here is it came in, we're below the 10-day, right now we're traded back above it, tested the 20-day. What I'd like to see is this break the 20-day and get a deeper pull in, maybe something back to the 50-day, which would be, oh, there it is, down in here. That's like 575 area. That would be a great look, get back into the 50-day. But as long as it's holding the 10 and 20, we're probably going to see more grindy action to the upside. So that's something we'll want to see. We'll want to, if we can consolidate and then break the 20-day, I think we could see the 50-day pretty easily. And then from there, we'll have to see how it plays, when it happens, if it happens, how it's looking, coming into the end of the year, if this is going to be a viable area or if it wants a deeper pull. I think that will be good spots to really start shopping for end of the year names that we can ride into the Christmas rally. Okay, so that's kind of my thoughts on the markets. I'm not buying anything right now with where markets are trading. I want to see a pull in first. So I'm sitting in quite a bit of cash just waiting, and will be, continue to be a bit more cautious on, swing trades unless it's a really clean setup. And we'll probably stick more to selling puts for right now until we get a deeper pull in where I can start buying individual names and actually buy some probably the indices and stuff. All right, so that was my week, and yeah, we'll see how next week plays out. I'll be taking PayPal, I think is the only thing I'm going to be holding. I ended up closing out the rest of my INTC put, so I'm all out of that. So yeah, really the only thing I'm carrying over the weekend is PayPal right now. And we'll see how that plays out next week. Oh, I'm sorry. I still have my SNDK puts too. So those are the two positions I have and will be holding over the weekend. All right, so that's it for me this week. I will try and do these recaps more often and every Friday, and just kind of let you guys know where I'm at, what I've been trading, and how I've been going about them. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. I will catch you on Monday morning.